CSE100 is logic design, but more importantly, it is the introduction to your chip design careers. So UC Santa Cruz is an internationally renowned school for chip design. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that, but we have like some of the most incredible researchers here, and we beat out like basically like any top school you can think of. I feel very honored to be working with some of the professors that we have at this school. And this class, CSE100, will leapfrog you into any of the more advanced VLSI and chip design courses that you may be interested in. So like next quarter, I'll be teaching a tape-out course where you will have to, you will design a chip start to end, and then at the end of the quarter, you will submit your design, and usually when you design a chip, it takes thousands of dollars to actually get a chip in the end. If you're Apple, it may cost you $1 billion, depending on what process node you're working on. In next quarter, it will be completely free to you. So I highly recommend, if you are really excited about this, that yeah, maybe start thinking about taking that, the tape-out course for next quarter. Yes, so chip design. Why study chip design? Like, I mean, have we figured out all the chips? Like, are we done? Like, what are reasons for us to continue on learning chip design in an academic setting? Any ideas? Some benefits, yeah.
Well, I think, if we continue studying chip design, then we have discovered new, efficient, optimal.
Sure, yeah, so we're trying to keep optimizing our chips. So maybe we're trying to make it more power efficient, or make them run faster, maybe, or maybe make them smaller, right? Okay, yeah, so definitely. However, people are saying that we kind of hit a wall on kind of the efficiency of our chips. Does anyone know what I'm referring to? Anyone know? Yeah?
Is that Moore's law?
Yeah, Moore's law. Yeah, could you define Moore's law for me? Do you know?
It's like every X amount of years, computing power doubles, stop.
Right. Yeah. Do we have another thing?
The physical size of transistors?
Yes, exactly. So Moore's law is about the physical size of transistors. It's that every other year, so Gordon Moore, founder of Intel, very smart dude, was approached. They were like, quick, like, Gordon, we need you to write a journal entry. And I don't remember the year. Let me quickly Google the year. This is awkward. 1965, yeah. So in 1965, a bunch of people approached Gordon Moore, and they're like, hey, Gordon, we need you to write a journal entry on anything you want. And Gordon was like, okay. And he pulled together all of his thoughts, and he looked at the past 10 years of chip development, and I kind of realized, oh, interesting, every single year it looks like transistors are getting smaller by whatever, square root of 2%. So that means that now every year the amount of transistors on a chip will double. So every year the amount of transistors on a chip will double. So that's crazy. So if you start with 1,000, then next year you have 2,000 and 4,000, 8,000, 16,000. So you can get you have exponential performance increase, because one of the coolest parts about transistors, just in general, it's just this magical thing, transistors, that when you make them smaller, they actually become faster and more energy efficient, which is cool. So so if I shrink a bunch of transistors, that actually means that now my chip is actually going to get more efficient. And so just as you keep shrinking things, you're able to build more and more complex designs. And so actually the amount of power that we've been using on a single chip has basically stayed the exact same, because as you shrink transistors and put more of them on the chip, the actual amount of power that you're using is just staying the same. So yeah, very interesting. Anyways, okay, so, Gordon Moore said this thing. He was like, oh, okay, so he wrote up this journal entry. It was this, in I don't remember which journal, but he published it, and it was basically just every year the amount of chips the amount of transistors on a chip will double. And then he later revised that so that where it was every other year, the amount of transistors on a chip will double. And it turned out that that was extremely accurate for the next 50 years. And every single other year, the amount of transistors on a chip would double, and the cost would go down. And so now people could afford these very fast chips, when before, like, having a basic calculator could cost you thousands of dollars. By the 80s, you could buy one for like $5 and stick it in your pocket. And yeah, and this is all kind of in a way due to Gordon Moore, because he set an expectation for companies to follow. It's like, yeah, if you're Intel and you're like, oh, well, you know, Micron, like, they're following Moore's law, so like, you know, we need to follow Moore's law. And then like IBM is like, oh, like, we need to follow Moore's law. And like all these companies are now like forced to enter this like arms race of shrinking transistors. Yeah, question?
Isn't like Moore's law is hard to reach these days? Because like, I think it's last year, Intel announced that the Moore's law is no longer exists. And also like, from Apple, the A7 versus these days, like this year's A18 Pro, it's like 30% increase and like 20% power efficient.
Sure.
So what do you think about like the Moore's law still exists?
Yeah. So fantastic point, leading us into the next thing. So, so what we had over here was, the recognition that in recent years, actually it seems like the number of transistors on a chip has not been doubling, and also the power efficiency has actually gone up a little bit. And that's because starting in, I would say about like 2009-ish, 2013, somewhere in that area, Moore's law kind of plateaued. And the reason for that is because we kind of got as small as we possibly could with transistors. Does anyone know what happens when you shrink a transistor to be like 40 atoms thick? Yeah.
There's like quantum tunneling, so the electrons jump at the gates.
Exactly, yeah, quantum tunneling. And so now you can't build your transistors just the same way. It used to be that when you would shrink your transistors, it would be a process engineering feat. So you would just get all of your machines just a little bit more precise, and you would just align things just a little bit better. Maybe you would slot in like another material or something. But overall, like going from, I don't know, like 130 nanometers to like 65 nanometers, like that jump wasn't too tricky to to completely halve the size of your transistors. But where we are right now, if you want to go from 40 atoms thick to 30 atoms thick, then the amount of extra things that you're gonna now have to worry about. So you're throwing in all sorts of extra structures into your transistors. If anyone is familiar with FinFETs, heard that term? FinFETs? Yeah, so FinFETs are this idea that your transistor is wrapped around by all sorts of insulating materials to really make sure it's please, no quantum tunneling, please, and yeah, so you'll have all these FinFETs, and you'll have 6 of them all in a line, and it's those are called fingered FinFETs, and it's the hope that they will all kind of even out. It's if you have one broken transistor, it's the other 5 hopefully will work. Although now we're trying to limit that to now we have no fingers. But anyways, okay. So let me see if I can. I just realized I never turned on the projector, so let me just do that. Cool. Okay. Yeah, so this is the most famous picture of Moore's law at the moment. It only goes up to 2020. But yeah, you can see, so starting out here, we can see very clearly that we have this exponential curve. And so exponential scale, right? And so it goes up, it goes up, it goes up, and then it starts to kind of plateau about here. It's still going up, but it's not nearly as much. So I'm sure you will see this picture many more times. Basically every single chip design, computer architecture lecture or class you ever take, day one, you're probably going to be shown this graph because it's just the most famous graph to really represent. Yeah, you can really see just the bunching up of innovation over here. Okay, cool. So Moore's law, very sad, is dying. But that's actually, in a way, kind of a good thing, right? Because why could that be a good thing? Well, what's a benefit? Why is it a good thing for you guys? Yeah. Ooh, yeah, it forces us to innovate in other ways. So if anyone's heard of like tensor processing units or like AI units, like why do we have those on phones? Yeah, why do we have those? Yeah.
They're specialized at running like AI on chip.
Yeah, so right, so it's specialized hardware. So it used to be maybe that you could just have a CPU, CPU central processing unit. It's a generic processor. You used to be able to just have a generic processor, just do everything, and it's like, oh no, like our computer isn't running fast enough. It's like, that's okay. In 2 years, like it will be, like it's going to be double in the speed. But now we're at the point where, oh, actually no, like we kind of reached the bottleneck to how fast we can get our CPUs going. So that means that now we need to start making specialized hardware. And so that is now creating all sorts of cool jobs where your job may be to just implement like some like highly specialized like operating system hardware or like, yeah, very specific instructions for some CPU that like in other cases like would not be needed, but now in like just the modern age of computing, it's like really important to have specialized hardware that just will offset the like kind of generic overhead of CPUs. Yeah, so that's fantastic because like you go on LinkedIn and stuff, probably a lot of you are kind of sad looking at the job market for like software engineering, and it's like, like, you know, it's not hiring, like I've applied to 120 things and like have only heard back from a couple or something. It's not great. Chip design, fortunately, is doing pretty well. If you go and look up some Verilog jobs, we'll talk about Verilog in a second. But if you look up Verilog jobs, then they're all paying like insane amounts, and it's all just over the hill in Silicon Valley. So like you're in a fantastic school for that. You can just drive over the hill, and now suddenly you'll be paid $300K as a starting job. So yeah, chip design, really fantastic. Another thing, okay, so why else are people interested in chips, specifically in the past like couple years? Yeah.
That whole situation is Taiwan.
Sure. Yeah. Taiwan. Can you tell me more?
Basically, the U.S. is trying to like manufacture more chips at home.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know if Taiwan's going to be viable in like the next.
Absolutely.
decade.
Yeah. So the geopolitical implications of chip design are crazy because China thinks that they own Taiwan, and the U.S. thinks that Taiwan is not owned by China. And but Taiwan is the manufacturer of 90% or even more, maybe 95% of just all chips. And so that's very scary for the U.S. and for our allies, because if bad actors gain access to these chips, then potentially that could mean military or what other things that would be bad for the U.S. So the U.S. has now put in $280 billion into something called the CHIPS Act. This was in 2022, and this is another fantastic thing for us. Great, so now we have $280 billion flowing into all of these manufacturers' hands. And so now, when you go and work at AMD and NVIDIA and Apple and all these places that make chips, they are receiving huge government stipends, and they can do all sorts of fun research and innovation. Yeah, and trying to pull some of that that power away from Taiwan and bring it a little bit more into the U.S. So it's another great thing. The European Union also last year published their CHIPS Act, which was $43 billion. The European Union is also very influential in modern chip design. Okay, and then the last thing, we're talking a lot about just the state of chip design, but this is my favorite thing right here, is that, Yeah, so has anyone heard of RISC-V? RISC-V, cool, okay, yeah. Could I get a definition of RISC-V from someone? Definition, yeah.
I believe it just stands for reduced instruction set computer 5.
Yes, okay, cool. Can we get a little deeper? Yeah,
It's an assembly language developed by Berkeley.
yeah, yeah. So it's an assembly language, so it's an instruction set. So like if you're making a CPU, so you can make a RISC-V CPU that does RISC-V instructions. And okay, so that's cool. So it's just a CPU, right? The biggest difference, what is the main kicker of RISC-V versus x86 or versus MIPS or versus other things? Yeah. It's open source. So what I'm going to slightly modify on that is, so RISC-V is an open license. So anyone can build their own RISC-V CPU without having to pay, UC Berkeley any money. Like UC Berkeley, those people created this incredible instruction set, but it's very universal. A lot of people really like it. So now all these companies and all these hobbyists and all these academics now finally have a universal language that they can speak. Because before, like, the rich universities, like they could afford licenses from ARM, so they could build ARM CPUs. But maybe other universities, maybe they had to use their own instruction set. So there's all sorts of different instruction sets. Finally, RISC-V has kind of united all the people that want to build accessible chips. And because of this, so there's all sorts of now RISC-V processors in the ecosystem. A lot of those processors are fully open source, so you can actually go and download the source code for these CPUs. Like you can see every single line of code that goes into building these very advanced processors. Very cool. You can I'll show you some later on in the quarter. But anyways, so lost my train of thought. But so Google then saw all this innovation and was like, oh, this is fantastic. We'd love to start a program called Google Silicon. And all this is we just give a bunch of money to silicon companies. So in some way, this is like Google's now like CHIPS Act, sort of. So now Google is sending out a bunch of money, and they are sending about a bunch of money to open source chip designers. So it used to be that if you wanted to design a chip, you'd have to call up TSMC, and you'd be like, hey, TSMC, I want something on your finest 65 nanometer process. Like, what will that cost me? And you send in your design, and TSMC gets back to you, and they're like, oh, thanks for the design, it looks great. Yeah, we can have it shipped out in 6 months. But yeah, it'll cost you maybe $100,000. And maybe you're Harvard or something. And you're like, oh yeah, no problem, you just buy that. Yeah, but I don't know, maybe you're a community college, or maybe you're just a hobbyist, and you're like, $100,000, like what? I have rent, I can't do that. So Google is now funding much more affordable chip design options. So now you can call up a company called Global Foundries, and there's an incredible ecosystem around this product called Caravel, and you call them up and you say, I'd like a chip, and they tell you it'll be $10,000. That's fantastic. That is an instrumental progression in modern chip design, just making it so much more accessible. Now that means that all of you sitting in this room, you could feasibly have a chip taped out by the time you graduate. When before, 5 years ago, that would have been reserved for top private schools who have that kind of money and funding. Now, anyone in the world, including people in third world countries, are able to learn about chip design and are able to pay for this in a reasonable manner. So, anyways, so that is my big hook of why I'm so interested, why personally I'm interested in chip design and logic design. It's just because it's so much more accessible, and we're at such a critical moment right now. And I think other universities are starting to catch up a little bit. UC Santa Cruz went on this big hiring spree for chip design professors in the past 5 years. So yeah, we've acquired all these huge names, and I think other universities are going to be catching up on that in a couple of years. So anyways, yeah, so that's my big spiel. Any questions on my big rant that I just give? So, how many transistors are on modern day chips. Like, okay, like your phone. How many transistors would go inside of, what is it, the A18, A17, whatever processors? Yeah, so how many transistors would we imagine goes into something like that? Yeah.
Looks like somewhere between 10 and 50 billion.
Yeah, I think around there, maybe even more. Maybe about like 50 billion. There's a lot, right? 50 billion transistors. Imagine you had to build like 50 billion like bridges or something, or 50 billion homes. Like, like transistors, they're very complicated devices, and we need to fit like 50 billion of them on a chip. Like how, right? Like how does that even work? It's like, wait, like think about it. Like if you're hand placing like a billion transistors, it's gonna take you, I don't know, thousands of years to like make one chip. So how do we get over that? What's like the magic word that I'm looking for? Yeah. The what? Sure, yeah, so I'm not gonna get into that, but absolutely, so that's one step of the process. What would you say is the most important thing that has led us to being able to create like huge chips with so many different working parts? So I'm gonna say computer-aided design. All chips are made on computers. Right? So in this class, we're going to be learning, we're starting to learn a language called Verilog. And Verilog is the most popular language used for designing chips. So it's a hardware description language, meaning you describe hardware, similar to like a markup language, like HTML, where you will say like, oh, like put this thing over here on this website, or put this thing over here on this website. Or maybe similar to Markdown, if you write like any of your homework assignments or something in Markdown. It's a language that helps you format things. Similar with hardware description languages. You will write out code, and it may look like it's procedural. Like you can even have like if statements, and you can have like ands and ors and all these cool things. But actually, it is just describing the way that like the transistors should be laid out on the chip. And what's cool is like you can just write it out in kind of a human readable format, and you just hit like synthesize. You hit like go, and it will magically spit out like a design for you. And that's wonderful, because if you had to go and like hand cut out like all of your little transistors on like a big mask, it would take a very long time. I quickly just want to show you one really cool photo. Rubylith. Yeah, here we go. So this is Andy Grove, Robert Noyce, and Gordon Moore. This is Gordon Moore from Moore's Law. Here they are standing in front of some CPU. Does it say? Yeah, the Intel 8080A. And here's a big mask, and they had to physically go in with like a little sharp X-Acto knife and had to cut out every single tiny little transistor on this big sheet of what's effectively just like a plastic film, which then they go and they shine a light through, and then it'll be focused down, and then they make the chips. So this is how they used to do it. Is you used to actually just have like massive pieces of Rubylith, and you cut out all of your little details. If you're interested in like the actual formation of all the transistors, I believe the class is it 120? No, what's the VLSI course? Actually, I don't remember. 132. 132? There's a VLSI course you can take with Matt Guthaus, an incredible researcher, and you can learn actually how to create transistors on silicon. So highly recommend taking that class if you're interested. But anyways, so in the modern day, we don't do this anymore. Instead, what we do is we write things in Verilog. So I'm going to do a very quick demonstration. This website is down about 50% of the time, so we'll see what happens. I apologize if it's down. Okay, we'll see. No, wait, what? on. Fantastic. Okay, this is good. If it wasn't working, then it would have been a catastrophe. Good. Okay. Look at this. So right here on the left side, what did I say this language was? Verilog. Yeah, this is Verilog. So here we go. So we can see, so we start out with a module, and I'm just calling it circuits, but I can call it whatever I want. And then I have an input and an output to this module. And then it's very simple inside. All I'm doing is just saying, assign the output to the input. So you can see when I click this input, then it will now change this output. So, okay, very basic, right? Now let's make an inverter. Okay, so now if I hit run, cool. So now you can see it's red when this is enabled, meaning it's off, versus when it's disabled, you can see that it's on. So this is an inverter. Great. Okay. Let's do something else a little bit more complicated. So now let's have input A, B, output C. So we can say C is equal to, I don't know, what gate should we make?
Example.
XOR. Let's make an XOR gate. Boom. So this is the syntax for an XOR gate. This little caret right here. You hit run. There we go. XOR gate. So A. Wow, look at this. Very cool. Very cool. So obviously this is a very simple design. Modern processors are written in, I don't know, 30,000 lines of Verilog, maybe more, 50,000, 100,000, depending on how you're exactly measuring these, measuring the lines of code. Yeah, so this is whatever. This was 8 lines of code to get an XOR gate. One thing is Verilog is fairly verbose. It's not necessarily the best language to use. At UC Santa Cruz, we've been doing a lot of work with Chisel, which is another hardware description language. It's better than Verilog in every single way, but it's not the standard. So instead, we're teaching you Verilog, which is the standard. And then if you want to do more academic, fun research things, then we'll teach you Chisel, because that's easier to do, and so you can tape out sign better. But anyways, okay, so Verilog, cool. Yeah, and so I can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah, here's an AND gate, and you know what? Let me also show you this. So you can actually make buses. Anyone heard the term bus? What is a bus? Yeah, what's a bus?
Oh, it's like a bunch of wires. You can imagine
Yeah.
it's like you just clump a bunch of wires and then they have what's it called? Like indices.
Yeah, perfect. So a bus is just a bunch of wires, but we can assign numbers to these wires. So we can call if we have a 4-bit wide signal, like maybe a number. So maybe we would have bit 0, bit 1, bit 2, bit 3. Okay, so let's make a bus, and let's just say from whatever 3 to 0. And notice I'm doing the numbers from 3 to 0, because the way that you think about it is like when you read a number, right? So if I write out the number 3,256, what is the least significant digit here?
6.
Yeah, the least significant digit. But it's kind of weird, right? Because we actually start backwards, right? We start on the right side. You'd almost think that the first number should be the least significant bit, but actually no. This is the most significant bit. So actually, whenever you read a sentence, so if I say the man said hi or something, we read sentences from left to right, but numbers actually the least significant bit starts in position in the final position. So that's how you can think of this syntax right here. So we're saying that we are creating a 4-bit bus A, where we have 0, then 1, then 2, then 3 in that order. Okay, so I'm going to now make these buses as well. And so now we have these buses, so we can just do the same thing. So now if I hit run, you can see that there's actually 4 whole bits here. So you can see this number 4. That's because this is actually, it's a 4-bit number. And so I can put in, I don't know, what should I put in? I'll put in, so we have an AND gate, So if I do all zeros ended with all ones, what result does that give us? Yeah, so that'll give us 0, right? So if we AND zeros with ones, right? What happens if we change one of these to a 1? Well, then it'll follow it, right? So if I do that, then now you can see we have a 1. Let me change this to binary. Yeah, and if I change this over here to a 1, then yeah, then it like follows, right? Okay, cool. So yeah, so AND gates are whatever. It only passes a 1 if both of the inputs are 1. And for a bus, when you have a 4-bit bus, that's actually just 4 whole AND gates all in a row. And so, so if we look at the schematic, it's actually happening. If we can just like visualize like a z-axis. So we have a z-axis of 4 AND gates all stacked up, and they're all performing AND individually on each of these bits. So that's how buses work in Verilog. And then also kind of how it works in just most kind of languages. Yeah, does that make sense? I can reiterate. Makes perfect sense. Okay, cool. Well, guess what? I can also make an adder. So I can do A plus B. Whoa, look at that. So that's maybe a little bit less trivial, right? Because like an AND gate, like you've probably spent a lot of time looking at AND gates and OR gates, maybe XOR gates in, is it 12, right? 12, yeah, excellent, thank you. Yeah, but adders, well, how do we implement an adder? Right, so it takes multiple gates, right? Yeah, so let's go through it. So, okay, so an adder. So let's just worry about maybe a 2-input adder. Yeah, 2 input, but we'll make it a 1-bit adder, meaning that we're actually not going to use buses anymore. So if we have the case 0 plus 0, that should equal 0, and we have 0 plus 1, so 1, and then 1 plus 0 is equals 1. And then finally, 1 plus 1 is equals 1, 0. Okay. So how can we implement this? So let's try to implement this exact behavior. So we've all seen addition before, I assume. So let's try to implement this exact behavior using gates. So the first thing I notice is how many outputs do we have here? Yeah, we have a 2-bit output, right? So there's all these implied like zeros right here. Well, what does this first thing represent? Well, what just like in this number, like when I say the leftmost bit, what does that represent? Yeah. I'm getting a lot of good answers. I guess what I was looking for was this is like the carry place. It's like when I add numbers to where they can no longer fit in this bottommost bit. So yeah, I would say that this is maybe like the carry bit. But yeah, someone else kind of threw out the method for implementing this. So if we just look at this leftmost bit, so if we have 2 zeros, we have 0. If we have 1 0, we have 0. But if we have 2 1s, then what do we have? Yeah, we have a 1 here. So how can we implement now this leftmost bit using a gate? An AND gate. Yeah, so this output right here, and I'll label it maybe like C. Yeah, I'll call it C. And I'll call this one S. S for sum, C for carry. So it looks like C is actually just equal to like A and B. Right? Yeah. Okay. Well, S, we can kind of do the same thing. Maybe we say S equal to what? So what do we put now for here, for our S bit? What was that?
XOR?
XOR, yeah, right. So we have A XOR B. So now we've just implemented this adder. Ah, sorry. There we go. Okay, cool. Right? When I saw this for the first time, I was like blown away. I was like, whoa, like you can create adders using just like gates. So that's awesome. So, you know, let's try implementing this now in Verilog. So, okay, I'm gonna get rid of these buses for a second. So now we're just having A and B, and yeah, let's still have C be a 2-bit bus. How would we make C a 2-bit bus? Yeah, 1, 0, because we have bit 1 and we have bit 0. So good, okay? And then here, so we could just do A plus B again, but instead we're going to say C of 1 is equal to, and what is C of 1? Hold on. Yeah, so C of 1, remember, so 1, like we count like backwards. So C of 1, sorry, yeah, so C of 1 will actually just be the carry, it's like C right here. So how did we implement this? A and B, yeah, okay. So this is A and B. And then now if we do the other one, so assign C of 0, then what should this be? A XOR B. Okay, so now if we hit run, then we can see that now we have an AND gate and XOR gate, and when I add 1, then now we have 1. If I add 1 to the other side, we have 1, but if I add both, then now we have 2. Cool, wow, incredible. Yes. This is great. Let's now make a 3-input adder. Right? Because it'd be cool if now we could kind of cascade them into each other. Like if we could take the carry from one adder and then put it into the input of another adder. And so what we've designed right here, this circuit is actually called a half adder. And so what we would like to do is now create a full adder. So this would be a 3-input 1-bit adder, which is a full adder. Okay. Do we have paper and pencil / iPad, some way that you can try to spend like a couple minutes trying to figure out how to do this on your own? Okay. It's a little bit more complicated, but maybe just spend like, I'll set a timer for 5 minutes. Try to work with the person sitting next to you, maybe work with the person behind you. See if you can implement a full adder. And maybe it's a review from 12. Not sure if you covered this in 12, but yeah. Okay, begin.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm Jacob.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so let's start making a truth table for this, and for the 3-input one. So a truth table is when you have like at the top, you list all of your inputs and all your outputs. So if we maybe have inputs A, B, C, is that fine? Let's call it X, Y, Z. Yeah. And then that creates the output of C and S. Okay, so let's fill this out now. So we can have, 0, 0, 0, and we have 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and then 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1. Okay, so here are all 8 of our possible inputs. So 2 to the 3, all our possible inputs. So let's quickly go through all of the outputs. So what is the output for this first one? 0, 0. Okay, next one. 0, 1 was next one. 0, 1, good, next one. Yeah, 1, 0. Okay, next one. 0, 1, next one. Yeah, 1, 0, next one. 1, 0, next one. 1, 1. Okay, good. So yeah, so now what we'd like to do is make C and S depend on X, Y, and Z. So if we just kind of look at this, it's not like super obvious how to do this, right? because it's not just one single gate. Like it's gonna take at least a couple gates to kind of implement this all, right? Yeah. So what's like a possible next step? Yeah.
Well, for C, you need at least 2 X, Y, or Z
Yeah.
to be 1.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if this is the most efficient way to do it. But you
Yeah.
can just do Y and Z, like parentheses, or
Yeah.
Y and X and Z, or Y and Z.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so so it's the recognition that carry will only be set if if there is a pair that is set. So yeah, we can say like, is this pair set? So if X and Y, or if Y and Z, or if Z and X. So that's totally a way that we could do C. Yeah, and you know what? Let me write that out. I think. So I'll say C is equal to XY, and I'm now writing it out in a different form. What is this form called? You know? Yeah, this is sum of products. So it's a little bit confusing because it's not actually sums and it's not actually products. Instead, this is the pluses represent OR gates, and when they're combined like this, that represents an AND gate. So I'm going to quickly say, so sum of product. Okay. Good. Yeah, perfect. Okay, and then is there something we can do similar for S? Yeah.
I think if there's like 1 or 3 spots like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's XOR. It's kind of just an odd number.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So XOR gates will actually represent if you XOR a bunch of ones together, just like maybe something that you should just keep in the back of your mind. When you XOR a bunch of bits together, you actually get whether or not you have an even number of ones or an odd number of ones. So it's kind of a magic thing. So yeah, so what we can do is we can just say S, I think is just equal to X XOR Y XOR Z. And so this will return 1 if we have 1, 1, or and it will return 1 if we have all ones, so 3 ones, so an odd number. Yeah, cool, okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, so we could go and implement this in Verilog if you want. I'm going to take another step back, though. Sometimes you don't have it to be like this pretty, though. Sometimes it's even more complicated. So I'm going to teach you just a quick like brute force method to like just always get a sum of products. And it's not necessarily the most efficient one, but it's a good enough way to get your sum of products. So this is good. So I'll call this, I don't know, human readable sum of products. Yeah. Shrink this a little bit. Okay. Well, another thing we can do is, so let's do C first. So if we look at C, we could just notice that C is 1 in this condition, and it's 1 in this condition, it's 1 in this condition, it's 1 in this condition. So we have 4 cases right here where we have 1. So we know for certain that if we are ever in this exact state, or if we're in this exact state, or if we're in this exact state, or if we're in this exact state, that we're going to have an output of 1. So we could probably just take like each of these and convert them into a term, and then just OR them all together. So it's kind of a nice kind of brute force just method. Don't even really have to think about it. So we can just say C is equal to, we look at this, so it's like, okay, so when X is 0, so we can say not X, and I'll put this in parentheses. So I'll say not X, and then YZ. Okay, so that represents this first term. So good, okay. Now let's do this next term. So right here, so what would the term be for this? Yeah, exactly. So X not y, z. Okay. Good. Okay, this next one, what's this? X, y, and what's next? Not z, yeah. Yeah, because we have a 0 in this case, so yeah. And then finally, what is this one?
X, Y, Z.
Yeah, x, y, z. Ah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And you know, I'm a little bit curious whether this website will do it, but I'm going to do a quick live experimentation here. Let's do X, Y, Z. Here, so this is the sum of products that we just wrote out, and let's now implement this long thing. So we can say assign C equals, the way you do a not gate in, yeah, you can just do an exclamation point, as we already saw. So Y, C, and then or X, not Y, and C. Yes, just converting this all from sum of products into Verilog. All right, is this looking okay? Am I making any mistakes so far? Huh? I do not need input B. Thank you. Okay, good. So let's run this. Okay. Great. So looks like we have our 4. Does this look right? Yes. So we have our 4 3-input AND gates here. All right. So this is exactly kind of what we would expect, right? So we have 4 3-input AND gates, and they're all ORed together. So we have a 4-input OR gate that is now taking each of these terms. So this is the actual circuit now that has been generated by this code. Very cool. Okay, let me now click this optimize button. I want to see if it's going to simplify this. Unfortunately, it looks like it does not. Okay, that's too bad. Well, I was hoping that was going to be a really cool moment. This website is not perfect, but what's very cool is that Verilog lets you write very kind of inefficient things, and yet there's all sorts of researchers and companies that their entire job is just to optimize your Verilog code into like a much faster, much more power efficient circuit. And what I was hoping was going to happen is it was going to magically simplify the sum of products. Unfortunately, it looks like the Yosis configuration that they have was not going to do that. But in an actual setting, so in your lab 1, which I've already posted, you will actually see firsthand how Vivado will optimize the circuit that you've plugged in, and you'll see like, oh shoot, like it's way like smaller than I was expecting it was going to be. So so what's great about Verilog is you can write these high-level constructs, and it will magically simplify it into the like most concise version of your circuit possible. And unfortunately, this website does not do that for you. So, but whatever. Anyways, okay.